The rise of Jujutsu Kaisen has been beyond staggering. With the recent release of its anime, as well as its manga skyrocketing in sales, it has totally taken up the community by storm, having a similar effect as Demon Slayer when it arrived onto the scene. But what makes Jujutsu Kaisen so much more different than the other new gen shonen series such as My Hero Academia, Boruto, Black Clover and many more? In this video I'll break it down into different segments where we'll discuss what makes Jujutsu Kaisen a modern masterpiece, as well as its influential impact that may carve a new path for the shonen genre. But like always, before we get into this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new and hit the notification bell to stay updated on my latest uploads. Also follow me on Twitter for any new updates concerning the channel. This video will contain spoilers from the manga. Well, for me and many others, Jujutsu Kaisen really has set the bar in terms of story writing and growth within certain characters. Every week without fail, this series has always kept me on the edge of my seat with unexpected twists and turns, and the story rarely gets boring, which is surprising because even with the training arcs in Jujutsu Kaisen, they actually have this purpose behind it and the plot doesn't slow down at all. But of course, without further ado, let's find out what makes Jujutsu Kaisen a modern masterpiece. So, Jujutsu Kaisen is a very intricate series, but when you take a step back and look at it from afar, it seems pretty simple, right? The story follows a young boy named Yuji being entangled in an event where he is forced to consume a cursed finger to save a stranger he literally just met. That sounds pretty odd, but the motivation behind this comes from the very first chapter, where Yuji comes to terms with his grandfather's death, but he's constantly seeking a purpose in life. That is when he makes the decision to put others' lives before his and protect the ones he holds close. The world of Jujutsu suddenly pulls in this completely normal human high school boy into a far more complex setting, but right from the beginning is where the magic really happens. I've seen a lot of people questioning the true goal of Yuji's. I mean, in Black Clover, Asta aspires to become the Wizard King, and in My Hero Academia, Deku wants to become the #1 hero. However, Yuji's case is completely different. He actually has no solid goal in mind. When I say that, I don't mean Yuji just runs around like a headless chicken, but he in fact has this minor goal of protecting others, which leads to the genius plot of Jujutsu Kaisen. Instead of keeping Yuji on the shackles that would determine his fate, Akutami instead decided on keeping it simple from the beginning so that he could allow himself so many different routes to take the story towards. The mystery and curiosity of how Yuji will end up in the series has us all constantly theorizing it with every new chapter that gets released. With other new gen shonen protagonists, you already know what will happen in the end. It's a shonen series at the end of the day, so these protagonists will achieve their goals. With Yuji, he was assigned to consume all of Ryoma Sukuna's fingers and will ultimately get exorcised, meaning that Yuji's fate is death. Like I just mentioned before, most of the shonen protagonists achieve their goals one way or another. The only other shonen protagonist which I know of whose fate was also death was Eren Yeager, and not many people were a fan of this. But the way in which the Jujutsu Kaisen plot is progressing, the more you get to understand the consequences of Yuji's existence. Acquiring the king of all curses within him, death looks like the only option at the moment. Anyways, since we sort of cracked down Yuji's personal goal in the series, another thing I'd like to discuss is the progressive storyline. Because Yuji isn't really tied down to a goal which will see him on some kind of throne, it allows Akutami the freedom to truly express his characters in many different scenarios. One of the more notable arcs is the Shibuya incident arc. I've read over this arc plenty of times and it doesn't lose its hype whatsoever. The placement of having the characters split into different groups, whilst Gojo tackles the much more complicated situation on the inside of the curtain, made this arc an easy 9 out of 10. The fact that so many different things were happening simultaneously, and Akutami not cutting these short at all. Yuji teaming up with Mei Mei and Wiwi, and then shortly going to help out Megumi in the fight against Awasaka. To top it all off, going toe to toe against Choso, where Yuji was at such a massive disadvantage. Another example is Megumi, Nanami, Maki, and now Obito facing off against Dagon in his domain expansion, alongside the reincarnation of Toji, which just makes this arc even more insane. A few more battles which solidify this arc being one of the best I've ever read is Yuji and Toro against Mahito, and Sukuna obliterating Jogo and Mahoraga. To believe all of these fights were in one single arc alone, plus there are so many other battles which I can talk about forever. This all falls back to the progressive storyline I mentioned earlier. Akutami set this open route for himself so he could go totally wild with each new arc he divulges in. Not many mangaka have this kind of freedom. Another notable arc would have to be the Hidden Inventory arc, where Gojo's high school years were fleshed out, but it was no typical flashback, but instead played a massive role towards the current storyline. Everything within the Jujutsu Kaisen world links in one way or another, and this arc is just another example of that. Gojo's past went straight to the point of how these new different ideologies plague the mind of Geto and many other characters, so it revealed to us the turning point of this series and why things are the way they are in the current timeline of Jujutsu Kaisen. It allowed us to witness what elevated Satoru Gojo's character to officially becoming the strongest sorcerer of this generation, and also mastering his infinity, which practically makes him invincible. Anywho, introducing us to the likes of Toji and Riko Amanai, it made us as viewers understand the sort of sacrifice which was made in order order to progress our favorite characters, and to make things even more interesting is how Akutami gave us all this context behind this immortal sorcerer, Master Tengen, and currently in this series is playing a big role, this clarifying my statement of how everything in the Jujutsu Kaisen world is linked. So now to the current stages of this series, we are getting to witness Maki greatness, with it being revealed that Maki is now entering Toji levels, especially with the sacrifice of her twin sister Mai. The misogynistic ideals of the Jujutsu world were completely squashed by Maki, wiping out countless members of the Zenin clan and beating Naoya with ease. This is a big step up for the female characters because Jujutsu Kaisen is predominantly set in a situation where female sorcerers are looked down upon, but getting to see the female cast shine during the Kyoto Goodwill event arc, and now with Maki going berserk, setting new levels and a tip in balance too. So of course you guys know as much as I do that the word masterpiece gets thrown around quite a bit, but Jujutsu Kaisen truly deserves to fall under this category even though it hasn't been long since its release. Personally for me, even though the world building of Jujutsu Kaisen is typical, it really does shine when we fall into its complex power system and even how Jujutsu integrates itself in the modern world. Anyways, let's now move on to the wide catalogue of characters which just adds to Jujutsu Kaisen being this modern masterpiece. When it comes down to the main characters of this series such as Satoru Gojo, Yuji Itadori, Megumi Fushiguro, and Nobara Kugisaki, is that they all balance each other out very well. Although Gojo, Yuji, and Nobara seem somewhat hyperactive at times, Megumi's calm-headedness puts this group at ease. Staying on the topic of Megumi, I'm so glad that Akutami didn't take his character in that dark emo direction like every other deuteragonist. With Megumi, he understands what his limits are and reads situations in an instance. He doesn't take on that Sasuke persona, but instead it's very similar to Yuji in a sense. Another thing about his character is the idea of him being limited by himself, where even Gojo had to step in and advise Megumi to let loose once in a while, rather than being calculative in every battle. I really enjoy this because we know that even this perfectionist has his flaws. Now if you look at characters like Satoru Gojo and Yuji Itadori, they seem like knuckleheads with immense power, and that's exactly what it is. However, their morals and pure instincts puts them at levels above any other characters in this series. Gojo takes on the Kakashi-esque role, but carries the entire world on his back. This broken, overpowered sensei allows his students to develop at immense rates, knowing that he can be there for them if they slip and fall. And now to Nobara Kugisaki, she breaks every stereotype of what many people perceive a typical female character as, breaking these barriers and being insanely powerful. The usage of her curse technique and how she utilizes it simply shows us that she is on par with the other two on her team and not being that stereotypical burden. On to the antagonists of this series. From what I've seen in Jujutsu Kaisen is that it has one of the best villains you'll see in a shonen series, with the likes of Mahito, Sukuna, Geto, Jogo, and many more roaming around and simply causing havoc. I've not seen a more diverse group of villains who all have their own motives and reasons to do what they do. When it comes down to the likes of Jogo and Hanami, their motivation is purely centered upon them being the true humans and believing that they are far superior. But when Akutami introduced an antagonist like Mahito, it just raised the bar for what a villain is. Mahito needs no motivation to ruin things for other people, and that is exactly what a cursed spirit's purpose is meant to be, created out of fear from other people and using that to spread even more chaos. I mean, with Mahito toying with Junpei, a totally innocent civilian, revealed to Yuji the harsh world which he was pulled into, and that anything can honestly happen. One thing that caught me out was for sure Mahito doing things purely because he deemed it fun. You don't usually see a villain whose motivation is to spread havoc. To top this list of antagonists has to be the involvement of Ryomen Sukuna. Jujutsu Kaisen is already 150 chapters deep, and we are yet to see what Sukuna is truly about, but even still his minimal appearances are so impactful because the more exposure we get of Sukuna is a sign of the end getting closer, since we understand that the ultimate goal is for Ryomen Sukuna to get exercised. But when Sukuna does get his limited screen time, he is as ruthless as ever. For example, murdering off Nanako and Mimiko because they tried ordering him around, and then going on to kill Jogo for the hell of it. The cursed spirits in Jujutsu Kaisen tip the balance between sorcerers, because technically cursed spirits are far superior when it comes solely down to technique, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm trying to get at, and that is the immense diverse catalogue of antagonists in this series. It also follows that progressive storyline route which Akutami is taking, using that freedom to amplify his villains in the most evil ways possible. Another antagonist who has been extremely intriguing as of late is the brain-controlling Suguru Geto, or as we know, Kenjaku. The fact that he wants to pull off a grand scale merging between Master Tengen and the non-sorcerers in Japan to eventually normalize and spread cursed energy throughout the world now gives Jujutsu Kaisen a direction to head towards, rather than relying on the exorcism of Sukuna. We get to see two different plot outcomes unravel right before us. This will lead to so many different developments and losses. Just one more thing I wanted to shine the spotlight on is most definitely the side characters of Jujutsu Kaisen, more specifically the Kyoto school. The likes of Aoi Todo, Noritoshi Kamo, Momo, Mai and many more made the Kyoto Goodwill event arc so much more entertaining, and although their characters haven't been fleshed out as well as their main characters, we can sympathize with their goals. For example, Noritoshi Kamo, whose life has been dedicated to the Kamo clan and wanting to change that for the better. And to keep it all balanced, we've got a guy like Aoi Todo, who's insanely strong but roams around asking people what kind of girl is their type. To top it all off, we also have characters like Yuta, Maki, Panda and Inumaki that make this series even more thrilling. As for this next part, for me I think it as the icing on the cake of Jujutsu Kaisen being this modern masterpiece, and that is a very complex power system. Cursed energy and cursed techniques require you to read over it quite a few times. Whenever Akutami throws in a fight scene, it's just not a reel of fighting stances, but instead forces you to look deeper and understand how these techniques work. Cursed energy has many variations, such as cursed energy detection, where a sorcerer can physically see where the cursed energy is resonating from. It's a small stuff like this which makes the power system so intricate. The way cursed energy works is also something that I'm a huge fan of, being created out of negative emotions and feelings, which is something that every human goes through, meaning that cursed spirits in a way can't exist without humans. So for sorcerers to gain a grasp of their cursed energy, they must control their feelings regardless of what situation they're put in. This is referred to as cursed energy manipulation. But what elevates these sorcerers when compared to non-sorcerers and some cursed spirits is the fact that they apply technique to the cursed energy. So this moves us on to cursed technique, granting the user special abilities. There are those who are born with technique and those who aren't. There are countless cursed techniques out there, most of them being really mesmerizing and all having different power outputs. And when you thought Akutami was out of defying abilities, he introduces the concept of domain expansions, an ability which requires mass amounts of cursed energy but can rarely be counted against. The Jujutsu Kaisen power system is not like a one-way system. However, believe it or not, most cursed techniques are all evenly matched, but it determines how you utilize your cursed energy. This adds that unexpectedness in battles especially. I'm sure this aspect of Jujutsu Kaisen is why a lot of us adore this series, and that is the religious history intertwined with the world of Jujutsu. Buddhism plays such a massive role towards Jujutsu Kaisen, with lots of symbolism and even references to other religions too. For example, Gojo is the chosen one. He's the absolute strongest and he's above everyone else. His birth impacted the whole world drastically, and he's the first one to be born with both the Six Eyes and the Infinity in over 100 years. People in the Jujutsu world always talk about how when you experience the Black Flash and get a grasp on reverse technique, you'll feel like you understand everything, and you'll be leagues above other sorcerers. And what those characters experience at that moment is similar to the moment of enlightenment in Buddhism. It is said that those that experience it get rid of all deluded doubt because the true nature of existence has revealed itself. That is just a little context of where the true inspiration of the Black Flash and reverse curse techniques come from. Another famous line would be Gojo saying, "Throughout the heavens and the earth, I alone am the honored one." And this is a quote from Buddha himself. Gojo metaphorically became Buddha during that split second against Toji right before he had killed him. Jujutsu Kaisen has many more Buddhist symbolism, and I'd love to do a separate video on it where I discuss Jujutsu Kaisen and religion, so look out for that. But anyways, the fact that Jujutsu Kaisen includes famous scholars such as Sugawara no Michizane, which just goes to show how far Akutami is willing to go for Jujutsu Kaisen and truly make it this memorable series. I mean, we've seen how Naruto involves Hinduism and Buddhist beliefs, and we saw how it was amazingly displayed throughout the end of the series. The way Jujutsu Kaisen utilized the religion, we might get to see much more Easter eggs concerning various religion, and this could shape the future for Jujutsu Kaisen. Anyways, Satoru Gojo's existence in Jujutsu Kaisen is beyond immense. Without him, this series wouldn't be what it currently is. The fact that Akutami just threw in a character who would go on to defy every stereotypical trope of what a sensei is supposed to be. Satoru Gojo is the main character we didn't know we would get. This untouchable sorcerer really did change the balance of the entire Jujutsu world all by himself at such an early age. So what does Gojo's involvement have to do with Jujutsu Kaisen being this modern masterpiece? Well, it's because he is overpowered, to the point where nothing goes overlooked by him. He literally has the entire world on his shoulders. Without him, the Jujutsu world would undergo another massive change in balance, which has been revealed in the latest chapters, especially with Satoru Gojo being trapped inside of the prison realm. With Satoru Gojo sealed, the plot has done a full 180, with the likes of Kenjaku taking complete advantage of this, knowing full well that if Gojo's released, he would be defeated with ease. So there are many pros and cons of a character like Gojo roaming around the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, and for everyone to completely rely on him makes this series so much more interesting. It sparks the question of what will happen if Satoru Gojo dies. How would the world of Jujutsu function? But anyway, Satoru Gojo's involvement in Jujutsu Kaisen is as detrimental as Yuji's, and to be honest, I see both Yuji and Gojo as the main characters of this series without a doubt. The intricate plot, detailed characters, power system, and religious symbolism easily make Jujutsu Kaisen a modern masterpiece. With each week we expect the unexpected. It's rare for a shonen series to have this many aspects to it, but we've seen the likes of Naruto that it leads to a passageway of success. Akutami has set the foundation for this series to go go on to become one of the all-time greats, Jujutsu Kaisen has taken inspiration from so many other series and added their own twist to it, making it very unique. It has everything that us fans ask for, and for me is easily a modern masterpiece. But what does the future hold for Jujutsu Kaisen? Akutami stated that the series would come to an end in the next 2 to 3 years, which is expected especially with how the manga is going, but he did mention that there would be a few more massive arcs on the way. If Akutami somehow tops the Shibuya incident with these next few arcs, then he would undoubtedly go on to be one of the best mangaka in history. But without the likes of Naruto, Bleach, One Piece and Dragon Ball, then Jujutsu Kaisen wouldn't be going down the route it's currently heading towards, so props to the other masterpieces which shaped this one. Well, we've made it to the end of this video. I've been wanting to discuss this topic for a while now, and I'm glad to have finally come across it. What do you guys think? Is Jujutsu Kaisen a modern masterpiece, or does it still have a long way to go? Also, if you guys enjoyed this analysis type video, there's so much more to come. If there are any other characters you'd like me to analyze, or even specific arcs, be sure to let me know in the comment section below. As always, like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'll see you guys in the next one.